Hi guys, welcome back to the Library of Alexandria. And today I'm coming at you with a Pratchett review of Boosh, Wyrd Sisters, Book 2 of the Witches subseries in Discworld by Terry Pratchett. The first one is Equal Rights. I have a review for Equal Rights, the first appearance of Granny Weatherwax, which is really the third book in publication order that Pratchett wrote. But look at this, there's no cover on this. So guys, this is my copy of Wyrd Sisters that I've had since 11th grade. So since 1999, I've had this copy, and it has seen better days. That is largely because, other than Guards, and Hogfather, this is the most read Discworld book by me. I've read Hogfather and Guards, and Wyrd Sisters definitely more than any of the other Discworld books. And so this has seen a lot of use. In addition, I directed, the year after I got out of high school, I actually directed a stage play, the stage adaptation of Wyrd Sisters. And so reading this was just a treat, a blast from the past. In addition, I owned the VHS, it was like 2 VHSs, 3 VHSs, of the animated, it's not very well animated, and it's not very well acted, version of Wyrd Sisters. You can see the whole thing on YouTube. If you just type in Wyrd Sisters, it'll pop up. It's not great. But I know this book so well, backwards and forwards, and so as I was reading it, things were just jumping back out at me. I was saying whole sentences, whole sections of the text that I hadn't thought about in years, in at least a decade. I hadn't thought about these, and the whole thing was just coming back because of the familiarity I had with this book when I was younger. This is one of my favorite Discworld novels. It is one of the best, in my opinion. Not everyone feels that way. So without wasting any more time, let's get down to business. Let's talk about why Wyrd Sisters is one of the top-notch Discworld books. I think Wyrd Sisters is where Pratchett gets a handle on these witch characters. Granny Weatherwax is so much better in this coven. And from the very beginning, because this is how the stage play starts, it's got the three witches around a cauldron. Because what you're going to see in Wyrd Sisters is, if you are a theater person, there's no reason why you shouldn't love Wyrd Sisters, especially if you love Shakespeare, because the Shakespearean allusions in this one, and just theater in general, are coming out of Yan Yin Yang. So Macbeth is the obvious parallel, but there's some Hamlet in here, as well as some of the other tragedies he throws in there. The book actually begins, and the play begins, on the blasted heath, and the three witches are around the cauldron. There's cackling, "When shall we three meet again?" And rather than continuing on with the line from Macbeth, instead, one of them, I think Granny, pulls out a little planner and is like, "I can do next Tuesday." Maybe it's Nanny. No, because Nanny's like, "Oh, well, babysitting for our John on Tuesday. What about Friday?" And so just from the beginning, Pratchett takes our preconceptions and subverts them and turns them on their head. And that is a theme running through this book. What you think is going to happen, what you believe to be true versus what is actually true. And it's just phenomenal. Granny with these other witches shines rather than she does kind of solo in Equal Rights. Here we see her as much more witchy, whatever that means, than really just the old lady, the old crone that lives outside of town that people come to like birth babies and everything. Instead, we see her involved in much witchier things. And it's a great contrast to see Granny, who is just this arrogant, terse know-it-all, because Granny can't ever admit that she doesn't know something, or that she's lost, or anything. Everyone else is wrong except Granny. Contrasting her with who we see for the first time, Nanny Ogg, who is just this portly, ribald, lusty old woman who has this huge family, and her role is more of a midwife to the surrounding environs. And so she's birthed like everyone in town. She knows everyone, and she knows everyone's mom, and she knows everyone's grandma. She's just the old lady that offers potions that everyone knows, and they call her when, they need to deliver a baby, and she's always saying, "Oh, Ron says, oh, Jason, oh, look, isn't that Roderick?" And I love Nanny. And then we've got the youngest member of the coven, and it was her idea to have these three witches get together. This is Magrat Garlic. And Magrat strives to be the stereotypical, like, the nature witch, and she jingles when she walks because she's got all these silver bangles and necklaces and charms hanging around, all like just hanging down from her, and her hair is just this big bird's nest, even though she tries to make it not like that, and her house is festooned with decorations and like pentacles and all sorts of other like naturey charm, witchy things that should be there. Whenever they try incantations, like Granny and Nanny are like, oh, you can just use whatever. And she's like, no, we have to use like Eye of Noon. It's like why? Just use the laundry soap. And she's like, but that's not witchy. And they're like, you don't know what witching is. And so all of her knowledge of being a witch comes from what she read in stories and what she's seen in movies, or, the equivalent. Everything she's heard about being a witch, not what actually being a witch is. And so the relationship between these three witches, who do not get along at all, that being a witch involves kind of insisting on your own way. And so especially Nanny and Granny are constantly butting heads about, because Granny's mean. She's mean. She does not take into account anybody else's feelings. And Nanny is not an idiot. She's an old woman who's lived a long time. She's also wise and doesn't tolerate Granny telling her to shut up. So the plot of Wyrd Sisters begins when the witches are standing there on the blasted heath trying to figure out when they can meet again. When this coach, which is carrying the heir to the king of Lancre, the country that they're in, being driven by loyalists to King Verence, is caught by thugs from Duke Felmet's bodyguard, because Duke Felmet and his wife, the Duchess, who has urged him to stab the king, King Verence, and seize the throne, a la Macbeth, they're trying to kill the heir. But the heir makes it into the hands of the witches first, and things ensue, and so the witches end up with this baby that they have to care for, and they end up giving this baby to this traveling acting troupe, which is leaving the country so that, Felmet can't get his hands on him, and they just assume, because destiny is destiny, they assume that eventually, because he's a king, and kings always seize their destiny, that when it's time, he will come back and he will overthrow Duke Felmet and take the throne of Lancre back. So we've got the witches, we've got the actors and the troupe that the baby was left with, we've got Duke and Duchess Felmet, and then the final main character really is King Verence himself, who is a ghost, but can't leave the castle, and he can't really manifest himself, so he spends his days, furious at Felmet and doing things like, he can only manifest enough energy to, like, push the salt shaker over, which makes the Duke freak out. And the problem is that the Duke and the Duchess hate Lancre. They hate it. They think there's too many freaking trees. The people are too stupid. They don't like it. They seized the throne for power only, not because they love the kingdom and they want to rule the kingdom. They just want to rule, period. And the kingdom itself, Lancre, starts to kind of rebel, like the trees. The Duke thinks the trees are coming alive, and the animals are disruptive, and there's lots of storms. And as the witches are talking about it, they're like, yeah, Verence was, he burned down houses, but he always had a good reason, and he was always very nice about it. He let you get out of the house before he burned it down, where the Duke is just like setting fire to things willy-nilly. And they realize that he cannot remain on the throne because where Verence was a brutal, like, king, at least he loved the country. He didn't hate it. He didn't despise it. He didn't just want power for power's sake. He wanted to lead this country specifically. But the witches are at an impasse because the rules say that witchcraft can't interfere, because if they depose the Duke through magic, whoever they replace him with will know that they're there only at the witch's will and can be removed just as fast. And so that is where the main kind of plot conflict arises. And in this book, there's just such a great use of the theater, and the theater and the actors as a stand-in for real life that seems more real than real life is. I talk about this all the time when I teach my history course, my Greek history course, because some of the things that the freaking Greeks did around the Peloponnesian War is so unbelievable that if someone had written it down in a fiction book, people would call it hackneyed, or that's not realistic. Like, that couldn't happen. But when we read books, like, that is more believable and seems more real than often real life is. Like Granny says, sometimes things that try to look like things often look a lot more like things than things, which is just the best Granny way to put this. So what Wyrd Sisters does really well is explore what is real versus what is fiction and which of those seems realer, and the power to change things by presenting alternate version of events. It's about the power of words, how words can change people's perception as long as enough people believe it, how words can rewrite history. It doesn't have to be true. It can be untrue, but as long as most people, as long as everyone believes this lie, this untruth, well, that becomes history. That becomes the memory. Think about how mutable your memories are. We have the Nelson Mandela effect, where we really believe, like, no, it was definitely like that. But our memories can be easily manipulated and easily overwritten by believing something that is untrue enough. If everyone who was there in the event remembers it a certain way, isn't that really the truth rather than what actually happened? Because what actually happened, there's literally no record of it. None. Like, did it even happen? And this belief and this perception is used, we see it used with the witches, because what I really like about the witch novels, in kind of contrast to the wizard novels, is the witches actually very rarely use their magic, where the wizards are freaking using magic left and bloody right. Because most of what witches do, and this was explored in Equal Rights, most of what Granny does is headology, and most of what, Nanny Og does is tonics and midwifery, and most of what Magrat does is just, like tarot, if you will. And so most of it is just psychology or plants or concoctions, very little actual real magic. But Granny wears her black pointy hat because she knows that that's what people think witches look like, and so she doesn't want to not look like a witch. She's actually frustrated that her skin can't get super wrinkly and she can't sprout any warts on her face, because that's what a proper witch looks like according to the people. But Wyrd Sisters looks at how easily that perception, that healthy line between respect and fear that townspeople have for witches, how that can easily, with the right words, be turned on them, and all of a sudden the populace is against the witches. And this power of belief is used also with the idea of destiny, and it plays with the immutability of it. Is destiny written in stone? Like, are you required to fulfill your destiny? Or is destiny easily changed by just changing what people believe as well? Is your destiny what you think it is? Can you make people believe that something is someone's destiny even if it isn't? What is destiny? And I love that Pratchett can deal with all of these really kind of abstract themes set in this hilarious, this is one of the funniest by far, play about these three witches who are just, like, they're not educated, so, they go see a theater, and it's, like, they go to watch a play, and Granny's never seen a play, but she's not going to admit that she hasn't, and, people are dying, like people do in, like, Shakespearean plays, and she stands up, and she's like, oh, that's the man what did it, he's right there! And, Magrat, who knows more, is just like, it's not real, and she's like, I saw who did it! It's fantastic. Pratchett has so many good descriptions. I always comment on the specificity of Pratchett's writing. I always have an example. Here's one describing the Duchess, Duke Felmet's wife. Lady Felmet was momentarily speechless. This was by way of being a calendar event. She was a large and impressive woman who gave people confronting her for the first time the impression that they were seeing a galleon under full sail. That's just description about this enormous woman, like a galleon, like a huge ship under full sail with the masts coming out. I love that. It's so good. It's so freaking good. And so reading this was just a delight as things came back from me from the movie, from the play that we did, and everyone in this play was just so well cast. The little girl who played Magrat, she had, her hair was just as bushy as hair can get, this poor little girl, and she already had like a bunch of like witchy charms that she wore. And the girl who played Nanny Og was perfect, and The same with Granny Weatherwax. With Felmet, I wish I could find pictures of this performance. I think I still have a picture somewhere of like the photo for it, in which case I'll show you. The guy and girl that played the Duke and the Duchess were absolutely phenomenal, especially the guy who played the Duke. His comic timing was amazing. You know, in Macbeth, he's trying to wash his hands of the blood and he can't get it off. Well, in this, the Duke continues to use harsher and harsher implements to scrub the blood off. He doesn't just do it. He starts like a nail file and then a cheese grater. And so toward the end of the play, his hands just bloody bandages. It's brilliant. And some of my favorite lines just come back to me, like the way these guys were saying it. Like the Duke saying, "Go back to your cauldrons, weird sisters." Which I also like things that quote the title. One character I forgot to mention is the Fool, and he hates being a fool. He's just been a fool because his dad was a fool and his granddad was a fool. And in this, really even more than in Men-at-Arms, where we see the Fool's Guild, we see just how severe and unpleasant and just dour the fools in Discworld are. But, you know, he jumps around and tries to cheer up the Duke because the Duke's like, "Fool, make me laugh." And the Fool begins everything with, "Marry," and he's like, "I am already extremely married." And he's like, "I' faith, nuncle," and he's like, "Nor am I thy nuncle." And so he tries again, and the Duke's like, "If your next statement begins with marry, I' faith, or nuncle, it will go hard by you." And I love that line, because I say it will go hard by you, like, in my daily life because of this. And my favorite line from the play is, there's a bunch of fog, and it's like really thick fog, and the Fool is talking to somebody, and he said, and the line is, we also get some right squandering orgulous fog. But the guy playing the Fool could not slow down to say, "We get some right squandering orgulous fog." And so it always, in rehearsal and in performance, it always sounded, "We also get some right squandering fog." And it's like, Tristan, what is right squandering fog? Don't you mean right squandering orgulous fog? He's like, "Yeah, right squandering fog." Okay, no one watching even knew what it meant anyway. So, at any rate, I strongly recommend it. I love this book. Like, I read it so fast. I want to reread it now. It's so good. If you like the theater, read this freaking book. Excellent, excellent book. On the Kingpin approval system, I love Wyrd Sisters so much, I'm giving Wyrd Sisters the rare and coveted Superb Plus rating. Oh, there's no way it's that good. It is that good. It is that good. Now go back to your cauldrons, Wyrd Sisters. And then out of 5 stars, I'm easily giving it 5 stars. If I could go to 6, I'd give it 6 stars. I love Wyrd Sisters so freaking much. So guys, that is it for me today. As always, information about my Patreon and Discord is going to be down in the description, and I'll see you next time, guys. Get back to your cauldrons, Wyrd Sisters.